One night, 3 loud knocks on the front door startled an elderly couple awake. When they answered, 2 young children stood there, asking to wait inside for their parents. Despite hesitation, the couple let them in. As the wife made cocoa, the husband noticed the cat hissing, and the children seated on the couch avoided eye contact. When the wife returned, the kids asked to use the bathroom. It was then she noticed their unsettling black eyes. Startled, she showed them to the bathroom, and when she joined her husband, his nose began bleeding. The power went out, and the kids, claiming their parents had arrived, left the house with the door wide open. At the driveway, 2 tall, slender men awaited. The children got into a car and the 4 drove away. In the following weeks, the couple faced strange occurrences, random power outages, discovering their cat dead in a pool of blood, and the husband's nosebleeds turning out to be a rare form of cancer. They might knock on your door on a cold winter night or approach you at a traffic light. These kids may seem innocent, asking for help or standing still without reason. They don't look scary at first, but their request to enter your home or car becomes persistent, and then you notice something unsettling. Their eyes are pitch black from edge to edge, without any white or color. You've just encountered the mysterious black-eyed children, and that chill running down your spine tells you it's not an ordinary encounter. Anyone who meets them feels a sudden and intense sense of fear. Despite looking like regular kids, there's something off about them. Their eyes are completely black, and occasionally people notice their clothing seems out of date. In some strange cases, folks even claim to see claw-like feet. But the unsettling part is that, at first glance, they just seem like any other kids, and that's what makes the whole thing so eerie. So sit back, grab a snack, because things are about to get scary. This is the case of the black-eyed kids. In the most general terms, the black-eyed children are a form of paranormal beings that take the form of a child between the ages of 6 and 16. They are typically ashen and dressed strangely, inappropriately for either the weather or the time period in which they appear. Their voices are sometimes reported to be breathless or monotone in nature, and of course their eyes, which are normal until the viewer inspects them, upon which they will prove to be entirely black. They are typically found hitchhiking or begging for money or food along abandoned streets, and even on people's doorsteps. These children tend to approach adults, either while they are sitting in their cars or at home. Most sightings occur in the evening or late at night. They typically appear in pairs or small groups, and they ask for rides if the adult is in their car, or to use the washroom or phone if they're on the doorstep of a house. It should be noted that these requests are occasionally odd, as though the child has come from another time. There are several reports that the kids have asked to use technologies that no longer exist, such as telegraphs, if the viewer refuses, and many stories include this because the children are accompanied by a terrible feeling of dread. The kids will become increasingly insistent, even to the point of pounding on the door and yelling for long periods of time. It's uncertain what would happen if they were admitted to the house, though there are several theories. Some believe that these children are vampires that require permission to enter the premises, and if they are granted entry, they will kill and feed on the person inside the house or car. Others believe that they are demons or omens, and that letting them into the house will result in a terrible run of awful coincidences and bad luck. People claim that these children have existed since the 1980s. However, most sources say that the legend actually originated in 1996 in posts written by a Texas reporter named Brian Bethel, where he wrote about 2 alleged encounters with the black-eyed children. He said that he encountered 2 children with pale skin and black eyes, and that someone had a similar experience in Portland, Oregon. In 2012, Bethel retold his story on the TV show Monsters and Mysteries in America. What he described shocked the general public, and calls started coming in about other cases involving these children. The story of the black-eyed kids began with Brian Bethel, a journalist in Abilene, Texas. One night in 1996, he stopped in a parking lot of a movie theater, using the lot's lights to write up a check. Suddenly, he was interrupted by a knock against his window. When he looked up, he saw 2 young boys. Their faces were obscured, but he could tell they were roughly teenage, with one slightly older. They asked if he'd let them in his car, saying they needed a ride back to their mother's house. For some reason, though, Bethel felt a wave of intense fear sweep over him. It was then he realized that their eyes had no color. Bethel immediately turned his car on, hoping to escape from whatever these children were. As he tried to pull away, the children yelled through the glass, "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." Bethel's car shot out of the lot in seconds, yet when he looked back, the 2 children were gone without a trace. Bethel admitted that for days after the encounter, he found that he couldn't sleep very well and actually felt unsafe in even trying. I kept having this fantasy of them appearing at the foot of my bed or waiting outside my door for me when I went outside. I have never been so terrified. When asked what he thought the children were, Bethel called them a sort of predator, believing that they wanted something from us, possibly our very souls. Bethel wrote of his experience on a mailing list dedicated to those interested in paranormal happenings. From there, the story leaked to the wider public, and the tales of the black-eyed kids have become an internet horror icon. Thousands of people have told of their encounters with black-eyed kids. The stories share a common theme. The children will appear suddenly at night to an isolated adult or small group of adults. They will ask for the adults to let them into their house or vehicle. For no discernible reason, the adults will feel an intense fear which prevents them from allowing the children inside, and they lock the door of their house or car. The kids will continue to demand entry but would either eventually wander off or the adult victim escapes. Bethel's tales sparked a mysterious wave, making similar stories pop up from all over the world. It might be easy to doubt Bethel's tale. Nowadays, the internet makes it simple to create and spread new stories, but Bethel's story came before these websites. Once it gained traction, many people started sharing their own encounters with black-eyed kids. Some happened in Texas, with a few going back to 1974 and 1950 in other countries. One famous early report of the black-eyed children comes from an elderly couple in a snowy town in Vermont. One evening, the couple heard a knock on their door, and upon opening it found two children asking if they could come in and wait for their parents to pick them up. While the children's behavior was definitely odd, the elderly couple decided to let them in due to the weather outside. They were brought into the living room, and the wife went to make them some hot cocoa, while the husband stayed with the youngsters. When the woman returned to the living room, she noticed their cat was agitated and hissed at the children. She set the tray down, but before she was to offer the children a cup, they asked if they could use the restroom. It was at this point the woman finally saw the black, soulless eyes of the children. She pointed them to the bathroom and quickly turned to her husband. His hands were shaking as he put them to his face. "Did you see their eyes?" When he took his hands away, she noticed that blood was pouring from his nose. At that moment, the lights went out, leaving the couple in complete darkness, as dark as the children's eyes. The wife opened the bathroom door to confront the children, but they were already making their way down the hall. "Our parents are here." They left the door open when they left the house. From the end of the driveway, the woman noticed two men she described as tall and slender standing side by side. The four figures got into a car and drove away. Once out of view, the lights in the house came back on. For weeks after, strange things began to happen around the house. 3 of their 4 cats went missing, and the remaining cat was found dead in a pool of its own blood. The husband's nosebleeds refused to stop, and when he visited, a doctor was informed that he had an aggressive form of skin cancer. He died shortly afterwards. Reports around the world continued. The internet made it a place for everyone to share their stories of these kids. There was a dedicated Reddit page for people with experiences, and they get very eerie.
It's 11:30 at night, in the middle of June, and I'm in my house alone with my dog. I was sitting on my living room couch when I hear 2 knocks at the front door. My dog immediately hopped up on the couch with me and started trembling. I got startled and hesitantly walked to the front door. My door has 2 slim windows on each side of it, so I looked out through the right window and saw 2 kids. One looked really small, like he was 5, and the other kid looked at least 9. They were both wearing winter clothes. Keep in mind that it's the middle of June. I tried to look at their faces, but my porch light wasn't working for some reason. They were just staring at the door. I was staring at them for at least 20 seconds when they both look at me through the window on the door. I run back to my couch and try to be as quiet as I can and don't make any noise. I hear 2 knocks again and hear, "Sir, let us in." Me and my brother are very hungry and tired. I just about scream because I have no idea how they know I am a man. I waited 10 seconds, then I hear, "Let us in, we have to call our mom." I waited about a minute and I hear pounding on my window, and one of the kids say, "Let us in," in a demanding manner. It has been at least 2 minutes, and I think they are gone until I hear my backyard gate sling open. I then hear pounding on my back sliding door. I run upstairs and lock myself in my bedroom with my dog. They kept pounding for at least a half hour. The pounding stopped, and I put headphones on and tried to sleep through it when they come back. I never saw them since.
I live in rural Vermont, and am an amateur author. It's my hobby, you could say, but I've been interested in black-eyed kids for quite some time and wanted to write a book about it. However, I've been doing research on Becks for about a week now, and 2 nights ago, my wife and I were awoken by a knock on our front door at about 2:40 a.m. It was a pretty loud knock, not smashing but just loud thuds in 3s. I told my wife I'll go downstairs and check it out. However, when I got closer to the door, I had an odd sensation of fear come over me. It was a very strange feeling that I can't really explain. I hesitated for a moment, 10 seconds or so, but then I bucked up and opened the door, and to my surprise, it was just a kid. At first, I thought it was the neighbor's kid who lives down the street, as he's around that age, 13 or 14. He had his head down and was wearing a dark grey hoodie on. I asked him kind of angrily what he wanted. He then continued to stand there and say nothing. I then raised my voice, and that's when he looked up at me. I don't believe I've ever felt fear like that before in my life. His eyes were completely black, not to mention his pale skin. I slammed the door in his face and locked the deadbolt. It was definitely not the neighbor's son. I then proceeded to run back upstairs right by wife to get to the window to see if I could see him, but he was gone. Just like that. Gone.
You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who is tougher than a U.S. Marine. These soldiers are trained in combat, survival, and to face the threat of imminent bodily harm or death. But perhaps they're not quite prepared when it comes to encounters with the unknown. Consider this report from a Marine, using the name Reaper 31, who had an unexpected and altogether unnerving experience with the mysterious phenomenon of the black-eyed kids. This is the Marine's story.
I'm a Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I live in the infantry barracks off of River Road. I recently had a rather strange encounter with a pair of black-eyed kids. I live on the 3rd floor of the barracks that have open walkways on the outside and the rooms on the inside. This happened on a weekend back in November 2009. It was a weekend, so almost every Marine was out, either home, drinking, or sleeping. Only a handful were left in the barracks awake. I'd stayed in that weekend because I was broke and had no money to go out. I was watching a movie when I heard a knock at my door. Figuring it was my roommate who'd lost his key again, I went and opened it. Instead of a drunken roommate, I found 2 little kids standing on the walkway. These kids freaked the hell out of me. I don't know what it was about them, but as a Marine, we're always told to listen to that little voice in your head because it just might save your life from an IED. Right then, that voice was screaming at me to shut the door and lock it. There was also the fact that these kids had absolutely pitch black eyes. I mean, no white or any other color to them whatsoever, just black. But I pushed those things aside and asked them what they were doing there so late. They responded by saying that it was really cold out and they wanted to come in and read. I was confused as hell because I've never met a kid that wants to read. Also, there was no mention of any parents or anything else you'd expect a lost couple of kids to say. I couldn't take my eyes off their pitch black eyes. It was like they were sucking me in. I felt horrible and was suddenly frightened for my life, like I needed to immediately take cover. They just stared at me with those goddamn eyes. I took a quick look up and down the walkway to see if any other Marines were out, but there was nobody in sight. I turned back to the kids who I noticed had taken a step forward toward me. I got the feeling like I was being hunted, like these kids were predators and out for their next meal or something. Instinct gave way to reason and I decided to listen to that voice and shut the door and locked it. I heard soft, constant knocking for the next 5 minutes before I heard my window rattle and then nothing. I went down to the officer on duty the next morning and asked him about it, and he said he hadn't heard of or seen any kids in the area at all, and dismissed it saying that I'd probably had too much to drink last night, only I hadn't been drinking at all or anything like that night. I don't know what or who those kids were, but I doubt any of the families here would let their kids wander around at night on a military base.
Even while the phenomena of black-eyed kids has received a lot of attention, doubt and skepticism are also drawn to it. Experts and doubters point to a number of psychological and physiological causes for these encounters, such as sleep paralysis, anxiety problems, or even the power of suggestion. Some specialists argue that psychological issues are responsible for the extreme anxiety and dread that black-eyed kids experience during interactions. These experiences might be greatly influenced by the suggestion power and human propensity to see what they fear. For example, many of these cases of people who encounter the black-eyed kids stated that they knew someone or heard of someone that had encounters with these entities, so there is a possibility that those people already had images and fear in their subconscious mind. Some black-eyed kids encounters have been linked to sleep paralysis, a condition that causes people to become momentarily immobile or unable to speak while they are sleeping or waking up. People who have sleep paralysis may have delusions and a sense of approaching disaster. Additionally, detractors point out that a lot of accounts of interactions with black-eyed kids are unsupported by hard data and could be fabrications or misidentifications of common kids. Sometimes the dread and anxiety that accompany these interactions can result in incorrect or exaggerated accounts. As for my thoughts on the black-eyed kids, I strongly believe that each story or myth that has a lore around it had to start somewhere. I remember going camping as a kid, and I saw something that looked like a little kid in the woods, and I ran towards it, and it just disappeared. I told only a few people, but it seemed so far-fetched. I believe that these people saw something. As for what it was, I can't explain that, but the lore around it had to start from maybe the real thing, or just someone trying to push a random hoax about kids with black eyes. Sometimes our minds are really good at making up stories, especially when we come across things that are strange and hard to understand. When we face mysterious situations, our imagination goes into overdrive, creating stories to try and figure out what's going on. It's like our brain's way of making sense of things that don't have a clear explanation. The mysterious phenomenon of black-eyed kids continues to captivate the curiosity and imagination of people worldwide. The chilling tale lies in their unsettling appearance, cunning tactics, and the overwhelming fear they evoke. Those who have encountered these children often share a common piece of advice: do not let them in. This cautionary refrain raises the profound question of the true nature of black-eyed kids and the origins of this disconcerting occurrence. This had to originate somewhere, right? People can't agree on whether black-eyed kids are just scary stories, supernatural events, or products of imagination. But whatever they are, the mystery keeps freaking out those who explore it. The fear and fascination around these entities have made many wary and cautious. As the phenomenon sticks around, the quest to figure it out goes on, leaving us to deal with the creepy unknown and wonder who or what these black-eyed kids really are. So as we come to an end of this case, I have a question for you. Have you ever encountered a phenomenon like the black-eyed kids or anything similar? Comment below. I want to know if you have any stories about cases and phenomenons you think I should explore. Please let me know and I'll be sure to check it out. Thank you again for joining me today on this journey. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button. It motivates me into making more interesting content. Let's continue to keep that curiosity alive and be prepared for whatever unexplained wonders come our way. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and like I say, remember to always seek the truth.